good morning to one and all. This is Dr. P. Lavanya, working as Associate Professor in MBA Department. We have seen in the last videos regarding the production function. So, what is production function and what type of ingredients are there in the production functions? Maybe what we will call it like factors of production. So, there are different factors of the production what we have seen in my last videos. And this now will comes to the production function which we'll call as a famous by Cobb-Douglas production function. A Cobb-Douglas production function is a model which integrates the relationship between the production output and also the production input. Means the Cobb-Douglas is a famous mathematician who has given this production function related to the factory inputs. Means what we have in the factory, maybe the material, labor, machineries. So what are the items which are presented or factors presented in the factory? So with that, he has given a production function which we can say like it is a short run production function also. So this Cobb-Douglas has been given that estimating or calculation of the ratio of inputs to one another for efficient production and to estimate the technological change in the production methods. Means this production function what was given is in order to calculate what is the ratio of inputs in order to get some efficient or a desired production to the estimated technological changes. Means what type of changes which was taking place in the production method gives the ratio of input changed which gives us a desired production or efficient production. Means where we can have a less utilization of the technology or the less utilization of the inputs and more amount of the output. So generally the form of Cobb-Douglas production function is a set of inputs which we can say that y is equal to f of x1 into comma x2 up to the number of factors, that is xn. Maybe factor 1 will take it as x1, factor 2 x2, factor 3, 4, 5, how many factors are there? So here he has taken that y is equal to the function of number of the factors what we are utilizing in the factory. So this application is a functional form which we can measure in production which owes to the mathematician called as Charles Cobb, and he is an economist called as Paul Douglas. Means this production function what we named is Cobb-Douglas. As we can say Charles Cobb, he belongs to the mathematical category which gives the production function by giving the ingredients of the production. And at the same way we have the another person called as Paul Douglas who is an economist. So these two people clubbingly gave us this production function in utilization of labor and capital in manufacturing of output. Means what sort of changes we can identify when there is a change in the labor and also capital while manufacturing of the output, and they examined and done some experimentations in USA from 1899 to the 1922. So with this period of time they have done both the people has been done a lot of experiments relating to these change of ingredients. Means change of the factor, that is what amount of the changes we can observe if labor changes, the same one we can change with the capital. So with this they have done an experiments and they have given these function. That's why we famously call as Cobb-Douglas production function. So in this origin of the model, Cobb and the Douglas restricted their output elasticity parameters, that is alpha 1 and alpha 2, the range that is alpha e, that is 0 of 1, and to the sum to the 1 which implies the constant return of the scale. Means here they have taken the elasticity parameters. Means based upon what the factors we can increase the production or we can elasticize. Means how we can extend the production by utilizing the inputs which gives us a more output. So for that they have taken a two factors or the two inputs in this original model where Cobb and Douglas restricted their output in elasticity parameters, that is alpha 1 and alpha 2, to the range of E, that is elasticity of 0 to the 1, to the sum to 1, which implies that constant returns of the scale. So here, these production function what was given related to the mathematical expressions which was given by the COP, that is these alpha and alpha 2 ranging of the or sum total of the elasticity parameters, means what type of inputs, that is labor and capital was taken. So based on that we can get any constant returns, means where the returns will go in continuously. Maybe 1 lakh output we are getting constantly, we are able to get where though we used more amount of the labor or though we decrease the capital also. So where we are able to get the constant output of 1 lakh rupees only. So along with this function, the another representation of this formula was related to the macroeconomics. The students of the macroeconomics may see that the function may be y is equal to a of L and alpha k of beta. That means L is labor as in a 1, that is alpha, and k is the capital where that is the beta. So besides of this data, Cobb and Douglas finds a value of 0.75 for alpha 1. So this implies that the labor accounted for the 3/4 of the value of US manufacturing output, that is capital accounting remaining for the quarter over a period of study. Means these are the output what they have done the experiment, what we have seen in that they have done an experiments in USA from 1899 to 1922. So in this period they have been developed this a value of 0.45, and where we can identify that for a 3/4 the value manufactured over a period of capital accounting of this period remained constant. So their estimations for efficiency parameter was Y. Means why they have been going for estimating or doing, means they want to find out what is an efficient parameter, means how efficient output of the production we are able to get. So their estimations for efficiency parameter is Y, that is 1.01, since it is greater than 1. Means our estimation belongs to the alpha, that is labor and the capital maybe must and should be the 1. So the standard is 1 and what is an efficient means 0.75. But here when they go on estimating more efficient parameter where we are able to get more than 1, that is 1.01. So this reflect that positive effect of unobservable forces on production through combination of the capital and labor. Means where we have seen that efficient is whatever the standard we kept is 1, but when we go on utilizing or changing the factors of labor and capital, so this changes reflects the positive impact, showing that those two factors may be having combination gives us a more amount rather than the standard. So which is in a positive reflection. So in this the multiplicity of nature of Cobb-Douglas production function, assuming the positive value, that is alpha, means inputs are complemented in production. Means the positive sense where the inputs what we have are complementary in production. The standard model of labor and capital, increasing the amount of the capital increases the production both directly and indirectly. Means when we have taken the changes in both capital and labor, so here what happening is there we are increasing the capital and labor gives us increased production. Maybe directly and indirectly we have a positive impact, showing that the total production or productivity of certain sector is also increased. So this is an outcome or the observations what these Cobb-Douglas has been, both the scientists has been done and got the references relating to this Cobb-Douglas production function. Next, now we'll see that in these production functions, there are the two types of production functions. One is short run production function where the inputs kept constant says that only one input is variable, and the second one is long run production function, where you are able to see that varying of all inputs means the factors of production within the long run all will be changing. So when we comes as a short run production function, short run in the sense it is in a time limiting factor. This type of production function, short and long run, it's based upon the time. So short run means where it comes from minimum 6 months to 1 year period. So with that short period of time, we are unable to change all factors of production. Maybe we have land, labor, capital, organization, so plant, technology. So these are all the factors of production. So all these factors of production within a short period of time, we are unable to change. So that's why in the short run production where the period was very, very limited, where we can find that the period was limited. So in this limited period, so we can say it is as a limited period. So in this limited period, we are able to change one, or in optional cases, we can go for changing of two factors. So the law which related to the short run production function is called as law of variable production function. So at the same way, when we are having relating to the types of production, maybe in the long run production function. In the long run production function, where we can see that the ingredients or the factors of the productions which related to the long run all are variable. Yes, in the long run production function, we have the 4 variables, maybe land, labor, capital and organization. So all these 4 factors of the production we can change. Why? Because long run means ranging from 1 year to 5 years of period of time. So in this period of time, we are able to change whatever the factor in the production. So that's why we can say here the law related to the long run factors of the production was law of returns to scale. So once when we have in a long period of time, maybe 5 years period of time, we can go for changing the factory surroundings. We are able to change maybe relating to the labor, capital and all other factors of the production. So these are the 2 types of production function where we can go in detail. Next, in case of this production function of short run, so the short run production function is the law of variable production function. So this law states that if the producer increases the units of one variable factor while keeping other factors are fixed, then initially the total product increases at an increasing rate. Then it increases at a diminishing rate and finally starts on declining. So where the short run production function says that only one is in a variable factor. So all factors should be the constant. Why? Because the time period is very much limited. So as we are having the limited time period, so we are unable to change all the factors of production. So that's the way we are going for changing of one factor and we are keeping the other factors of the production as in a fixed nature. Then initially when go on one factor was increasing and other factors were in a constant manner. First stage the production will goes on increasing. So at 10% or the rate the production goes on increasing. Then after the first stage, though we are implementing more amount of one factor into the production, so the total production cannot be increased simultaneously at the same rate. So then it goes on a little bit of diminishing range. Maybe more amount of the one factor was introduced, then the rate of production, maybe the total production was increasing, but the rate of total production comes on decreasing. So then also after the second stage also, when we are go on increasing the factors of production, finally it goes in a negative returns, which we'll call as a declining stage. So, and this law of variable returns, so we have some assumptions where we can identify, means when some are constant in stage only, this law of return to scale will work. So what are the assumptions of this law? Means constant. The first one is the constant state of technology. So it is assumed that the technology. Why? Because in the short run, all factors or cannot be changed. So only one factor we are able to change. In that sense, only other factors means that mainly the technology means if the improved or the change in the technology automatically will changes the total production. So that's why as we have taken labor or capital are only the changeable factors, but the technology must and should be constant. The improvements in the technology will enhance to improve the production factor. So the first one is the constancy of technology, and the second one is the variable proportions, factor proportions. This assumes that factors of production are variable. So this law is not valid if production was fixed. Means we have taken that any one factor must and should be variable. Means all should not be fixed. Means one should be must and should be the variable. Then only we are able to identify the differentiation. If all are fixed, we cannot identify the differentiations. Yes. And the next or the third important assumption was the homogeneous factor units. So this assumes that all the units which are produced are identical in quality, quantity and price. In other words, the units are homogeneous in nature. Means whatever the production we are giving, all must and should be equal. There should not be any sort of change in the cost, quality, price, and means distinction should not be there. Means all must and should be equal and same. Next, and as this law of variable proportion indicates about short run, so this assumes that this law is applicable to the only operating for a short period of time, where it is not at all impossible to alter all factors of production. As we know that all factors of the production cannot be changed. Why? Because the time factor is limited. That's why it is operated. Means law of variable proportion is operated only for the short period, minimum 6 months to 1 year. So these are the some of the assumptions where when we are able to go for this law of variable proportion. So now we go to the law of variable proportion with a graphical explanation. So here, for example, if you get a clear picture, that is already I have said that there are 3 stages of law of variable proportion. Yes, as we have said that we have taken proportion like taking an example of an agricultural product. So let us assume that keeping land as a fixed factor, the production of variable factor, that is labor, could be varied. Means we have taken 2, that is fixed is land and another factor is variable, which we'll call it as a labor is a variable factor. So now we'll see these distinguished table showing that what sort of changes we can identify. So in this table, first one we have taken the land and capital in units. Means as the land was fixed, maybe taken as a 10 units of land. So whatever the range of the production, the total 10 units are taken. Why? Because the land is in a fixed factor. Next, what we have taken the second one, variable factor. So what is this variable factor? That is the labor. So we goes on, first 0 amount of the labor taken, we goes on increasing the labor. So we has to identify the 3 stages here, that is stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3. So when I want to identify these 3 stages, we has to identify those stages through what happens to the total production, what happens to the marginal production and what happens to the average production. So first we should identify what is the total production. Total production means what is the total tons or the total amount of the goods produced by that particular period or a particular time. For example, we have 10 units of labor and 0 unit of workers is there, so we doesn't have any production. So we used to identify that is total production divided by this number of units. Means we'll get total production by total number, that is divided by units. Then we used to have the total production. So we'll see that 1 divided by 6 marginal production. Next, what is marginal production? Means that is additional production, where we can say it is an additional production. To the upper one, what we have been added means the differentiation for last units produced to the second unit produced. For example, 0 to 6, the additional is 6. 6 to 14, the additional is 8. Means what additional units? By changing of one factor, what type of addition we have been produced, we can identify in the marginal product. Next, after that, average production means overall production. So, average what we have been produced for a certain units of production. So, these are the three columns which you can identify, and where we can also identify these three stages. What happens in the first stage, what happens in the second stage, and what happens in the third stage of production. So, first we will see when the labor was 0 units and the capital was fixed. So, there is no production. And when we have seen that 1 unit of labor was introduced and we have 6 units of production. So what we have, that is the total production. 6 divided by 1, we used to get 6 units of production. So when you have seen the additional production, maybe for 0 to the 6, what we have produced from last unit to now, 6 units of the additional production. Next, when I have introduced another product, that is 2 units of labor. When 2 units of labor was produced, then automatically the total production was increased to the 14 units or the 14 tons what we have taken above. So for these 14, what sort of additional we have done? 6 minus 14, you will get 18 additional units by changing one more, means one factor of labor, means 1 unit of the labor change, we have increased our production to 18. Next, third units of labor means more additional, another labor has been introduced. When another labor has been introduced, the total production increased from 14 to 24. Yes, so 14 to 24 means where you are able to increase from 8 minus, that is 14 minus 24, you are getting additionally 10 units more production. So, by these 3, that is increasing from 1 to 3 units of labor, as we have been identified that the additional production what we have done, the first increase to 3 and increase to 8 and next we increase to the 10. So, when you comes to the average point of view, that is first is 6 and we have average production is next. 6 to 1 unit averagely total production was increased to 8. And after that, they have increased another unit that is called as 8. Means averagely, when we have been changes done in the labor, so this sort of increase we have seen. So what we have seen at this 3 point of view is increasing from one to another. So the first stage, what we'll call it as increasing stage. By introducing additional unit of labor, where we have kept the land as a fixed factor, the total production increased. Simultaneously, we are able to identify that additional production is also being increased. With that additional, average total production was increased. So, up to these 3 stages, you are able to see that constant returns means increasing returns to scale. So, the next, after that also, we go on implementing another unit of labor. So, simultaneously, we can see that when more unit was increased, the total production will be increases. Maybe from 24 to 32. Yes, increased. So, that increased to 8. Means where you can identify that last when I have introduced 3 units of labor, where the total production is 24. But additional production, what we'll call like average production was 10, increased more. But averagely what we have got is only 8 units increased. Means overall production we got only 8 units. But when we have increased the 4th one also, the average production was 8 only. Means constant. From 3 to 4 where you can identify that maybe up to a certain level, the increasing returns was taken by implementing more amount of labor. After that, maybe when we introduced more labor also, the total production rised. Minimum the total production rised, but the average production was constant. So when these constant, where we can see that the second stage of returns will be started. So after that I have introduced another one, that is 5 units of labor. Another introduced. So the total production increased from 32 to 8, increased to 6. So you can identify here from 10 to 8, it is decreased 2 units. 8 to 6, another 2 units was decreased. Means additionally we are not getting anything. But after we have reached to the certain stage of production, maybe though you increase the labor also, the work was distributed among the labor, but the production was not increasing. So simultaneously we can identify that the production was a decreasing level. So where you can identify where in the average production also 8 to decrease to 7.6 and 7.6 to 7. Means this is the second stage where you are identifying that decreasing returns of scale. So though also maybe when we have taken to identify these 3 returns, that is second one is decreasing, means though total production increases, but average and marginal production comes on in a decreasing level. Next, after that also we implementing 6 units of labor, 7, 8, 9 goes on increasing the labor, where we have seen that additional production was increasing. So after the 8 units of implementation, these total production is also has came to the constancy, that is 38 to total production increased to 42, and after 42 we have 44. After 44, though we increased another unit of labor also, that's 44. Maybe I increased another labor, now I am getting total production was also in a decreasing level from 44 to 42. But when you identify in the marginal, that is additional production, 6 to 4 decreased, 4 to 2, and hereafter what I said that constant, when the total production was constant, we have in a 0 additional production. So after that also when I introduced, we are getting -2, which you will call as a negative returns. Means after certain stage, though we implemented one factor of production more, we are able to experience the negative returns. So this is a third stage where we can say that is the negative returns has been applied. So for this taking an example, we can explain or we can enumerate that this law of variable production, which related to the short run production function, where we can say that itself at a certain stage only one factor was increasing and other was constant, then we are able to go for an increasing returns, which we can identify in the graph also. The first stage where we can see that total production was increasing. Once the total production was increasing, the marginal production and average production also increased, where you can identify this as a first stage. And after that in the graphical also we can identify that though we increased, come to a constant stage of total production, though we increased more, we are able to find that a just decreasing returns. Maybe total production increases, the marginal production and average production comes in the lines of decreasing, which is in a second stage. And after that, though we increased more units, we are able to identify the declining returns, total production, average production and marginal production all will decreases. So this is about these 3 stages relating to the law of variable proportion. So with this we can come to a conclusion that the 3 stages which are given in the short run production law of variable proportion, where the total production in the first stage initially increases and the second stage start to decrease and third stage go for totally decreasing. And when you comes from an average production, it is also increases at the first stage, decreases in the second, and decline continues in the third stage. And when it comes from the marginal or additional product, it is also where the first it have a good increase, then it comes on continuing, it falls into the zero at the second stage. And when you comes for the third stage, not zero, it goes to the minus, that is negative returns. So this is an explanation or the introductions relating to the law of variable returns, which has given for a short run production function. Next, we'll see regarding the second law, which is called as production function in long run. That is long run production function. This law is law of returns to scale. So as we have taken in the introduction that a long run production function means where we have taken time period more than 5 years, means ranging from 1 year to the 5 years, we have the production function, means where we have a sufficient time period to change the factors of production. So that's why in the long run, all factors of production, means all the factors and the production are changeable or maybe variable. So here in the long run production function, no factor is fixed. Means in the long run, due to the time limit, we are having a lot of time, we are able to change whatever the necessary changes in the production. So according to this, the scale of production could be changed by changing the quantity of all factors of production. Means in the long run, when we are able to change the each and every quantity in the or each and every factor in the production function. So first we'll see that the definition of these long run production functions which was given by the Cartesians, that is the term returns to the scale refer to the changes in output as all factors change by the same proportion. Means in the long run where the scale returns, means production returns, the changes in the output will take place by changing all, means labor we can change, capital we can change, materials we can change, land we can change, all the factors, whatever the things, maybe we can enumerate here the technology also. If there is any improved technology we are able to get, that can also we can change. Means whatever the factors in the production, all the factors we can change in the law of return to scale. So, in this long run, where output could be increased by increasing all factors at the same proportion. Means the total production increases by increasing whatever the factors in the production. So generally this law of return to scale, it is also refers to increase in output due to the increasing of all factors in the same proportion, which calls as the returns to scale. Once the output was increased due to the increase of each and every factors of the production with a sufficient time period, that law we used to call as returns to scale. So, and these returns to the scale, we are able to identify here also 3 stages in the returns to scale. So, in these stages, the first one we can say, the first stage in the returns to the scale was increasing returns to the scale, and the second stage we can say like constant returns to scale, and the third stage we can say like diminishing returns to scale. So there are the 3 stages when we occur, that is when all factors of the production was changes. There also we are able to identify that 3 changes, that is 3 stages, that is increasing, constant and also the diminishing. Once when we identified about increasing returns of the scale, where the total output increases proportionately, means along with the output and input change. Yes. So where you are able to see that when the total change in the output occurs by all input changes proportionately, means what factors we are introducing and what type of changes has been taken place. Output and input all will be taken at an increasing rate. And when you comes to the second stage, where output may increased or comes to at a constant level and a proportionally, means output was increasing, but that increase will be in a constant, means maybe first increased here when you take it in an increasing return 10, 12, 13, 14, 20, so the output goes on increasing. But when you comes under the constant, the product will increase, but in a constant returns, means where we have 10, 12, then we go for 12. So another maybe you increased, there you are always used to get another 12 units. So like that means constantly 12, 12, 12 means more we are unable to go. Maybe 0.% may increase, but we can't get more amount of increase in the constant returns where the production will constant. Next, when it comes to the third stage, diminishing, where here 10 to increase to the 12. Now at the third stage, we are able to say 12 to 11, then 11 to 10, 10 to 9 comes on increasing stage. Though we have implementing a proportionate, means equally changing the labor, capital and other factors of the production also, we are able to identify increasing, constant and diminishing returns in the long period of time. So, this we can explain with an example that where the production function P1 was taken within a function of L and K, that is labor and capital. If P1 increases in the same proportion as increases in the factors of production, that is P1 by P, which is equal to X1, which is in a constant returns to scale. When you comes under the first stage, what they are telling, maybe we have been introduced a unit of labor, units of capital, when we can see the percentage of increase, where 1 unit of labor was increased with 3 units of capital, then it came as another unit, that is 2 units of labor was there, and automatically 9 units of capital, which gives us, yes, we are able to identify the 100% return, where we can enumerate it as a increasing returns in the constant returns to scale. Next, when you see at the second, where P, the production increases less than proportionately increasing in the production factors of production. That is, as we have introduced P1 by P, that is more amount, that is less than X. What the increasing return we got equal to X. The production was 100% increased, so that is an increasing in constant returns. But when you comes here, the second stage, where it is less than X, which is in a diminishing, means you identify here, maybe we changed the 3 units of labor within a 9 units of capital, then we have only the change in the 50%. So the total production changed from 30 to 60. Maybe total production increases, but what is happening here? The change is constanting, coming at a constant rate. The 200% increased in total production comes to 100%. So when we go on increasing other factors, where you can see that 33% has been increased from 50 to 33. Next to 33 to 25. So here we have seen that at a second stage, the total production, where you are able to identify that 100 units increase that to 33 and 25. Some constancy is there, that is decreasing also in some parameters, that is constant parameters where we can identify. But though after getting the constant returns also, we are increasing these labor units and the capital at the long run also, here where we have to get as a diminishing or very decreasing returns, that is though we increased 5 units of labor with 15 units of capital, 6 units of labor with 18 units of capital, we are identifying that decrease from 25 to 20, 20 to the 16.6, where we can see that below 10%, that is 10 to 8.3, where you can say like decreasing returns. Means here, maybe in the long run, the capacities or the reasons for these long run getting the same, that is increasing constant and diminishing returns as we are getting in the short run is due to the economies of the scale and also the diseconomies of the scale. So we should know that what is this economies of the scales and diseconomies of the scales. Means what advantages that organization enjoys when it increases the production by increasing the factors of production, that we'll call it as a economies of scale. Means economically the production was increasing, efficient output was coming outside. What are the advantages we are getting? And after that, if that a certain capacity, the organization maybe can allow the changes to certain capacity. For example, if you have taken a room where the students we can fit for 40 people, a room is accommodated for 40 students to take the class. So maybe the capacity of that room is 40. So when I implemented 10 people, the room will be vacant. So I have a capacity where it is an advantage. Up to 40 people I give an accommodation within the room. So within a room where I can provide an accommodation of 40 students. So if 20 are there, I can have an excess capacity where I can go for another 20. If 30 are there, I have another capacity of another 10 people. So this is the advantage. So until the total capacity or the room was filled, we can have the same class, same type of amenities we can utilize. So the same way in the production also, when then increasing returns where the capacity will be taken into the consideration, and at the same way by utilizing the internal capacities by additional incrementals of factors of production, we are able to identify that economies of the scales, means advantages will added, and due to that the production will be increases. So in the increasing returns of the scale, where we have resulted in the higher rate of output. These higher rate of output maybe, for example, the output were raised from 10% to 20% due to the taking the internal advantage of the production capacities. And at the same way, when we are taking these internal advantage of production capacities or enjoying the economies of the scale, where we can have the specialization through the better division of labor. Means production is going on, the labor was divided, specialization will comes. Yes, doing the same work, experience will come, specialization will be there. Then automatically work is done in a good perfection and also expertization. Then they will complete the work in a fast manner and efficient goods has to be produced. So these are the two reasons why in the long run also the production function was experiencing the increasing returns of scale. So along with that, we have the second stage, what we can call like constant returns of the scales, which we occurred in the long run production. So here we can also describe that the constant returns of the scale where the conditions, the factors of the production increases at a same level, that is a constant level, result in steady growth of the production or maybe the output. For example, if we have taken that rise by 10%, then output will increase by another 10%. Means it will not go more than what increase. Last time it was increased 10%. This time also it was by taking an advantage of internal advantages, it was increasing the 10% of production. So the reasons for getting these constant returns of the scale, as the firm production grows on, it will reaches to a point where the economies of the resources, means what I gave an example that when 40 students are accommodated in one room, so after 40, I am able to introduce one or two or maybe another 5 students, and after that I can't accommodate a single student also. Means when these capacity or economies are getting fully utilized, there we are able to identify the constant returns which was equal to the inputs and outputs. So in the constant returns where we utilized fully the existing capacity or the outputs, and then we can able or we can able to identify these increasing or maybe the constant returns we are occurring, that as an equal, that is if 10% increase, the same output will also increases in the 10%, means equal proportionately the input and output will be increased. And when we comes from the third stage of long run production, where we are able to identify that all factors are increasing, means as whatever the factors we are taken in the production, maybe land, labor and all will increases simultaneously, but the production rate will be decreasing or comes at a slow level. That is, if inputs or the labor capital what we increased, maybe the 10%, but the output what we are getting will be the only 5%. So what we have said that the output what we are gaining is as we have been utilized fully the capacities, maybe the machineries and everything was fully utilized. So after that also when we are utilizing, they will doesn't give us the desired result, maybe desired production. It will give very less production. That's why in the diminishing returns, though our inputs was increased at a same level, but production comes at a slower rate or decreases. So the major thing for that is, already I said that diseconomies of scale, means the major cause of diminishing returns is already economies of scale, means enjoying the internal advantages by increasing the production. What are diseconomies? When production has been went or reached to the certain stage, all the internal utilization or internal advantages are exhausted, means fully utilized. After utilization, there is no scope for utilization of any internal advantage in the production, means the capacity was exhausted, means capacity 100% we utilize. There is no scope, means no scope to utilize. Then if that situation also, when we goes on implementing or increasing the production of internal input, then we are able to face the production rate itself comes as a decreasing. That is, we are able to experience the diseconomies of the scale. So, which is very difficult and giving in a negative rates returns. That's why the managing or the capability to manage within the internal input and output will be very difficult. So this gives rise to the lack of coordination, means the correlation between, that is, input and output will be disturbed. So the coordinating of the same percentage or increased in the inputs cannot be given as the desired level of output. So in this way we are able to give that the three stages is occurs in the constant returns of the scale. What we can say, in the long run also the increasing returns to the scale, constant returns and also the diminishing returns of the scales. So with this we can comes to a conclusion of this production function, saying that short-run production function, where we have been identified that only one factor was changed and all factors are constant. And we comes to the long-run production function, where all factors in the production has been changed. So in this we can say these a matrix we can evaluate the change in the productivity after increasing all inputs and outputs. So the rate of inputs and outputs simultaneously adjust and are referred in these returns to scale. So in this long run production function, where we can see that important study in the economics is, we are able to measure the efficiency or the rate of increased, constant or diminishing in a metrical level, means where we can have a valued manner, we are able to measure the production. And at the same way, the company can have an efficient to maintain the current output and also utilizing the fewer or resources or to increase the output using the same amount of input. Means we can give that conclusion that where the organization can understand that which factor to be increased at what level and which factor to be decreased at what level? Means when I want an efficient overall production, so at some level where the total capacities was exhausted and where we are able to face the constant return, it is meaningless to go on increasing the production. So here the management can take a good decision relating to the at what or a certain level the production could be increased and get a good or efficient profits within the organization. So with this, we can come to the conclusion relating to the production functions like the short run and long run production function. Yes. Thank you to all.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.